Welcome back, my friends. Today on the channel, we're going to do the monthly question and answer video. Once a month on the Posts tab, my YouTube channel, I'll put out a question prompt such as this one. Down below, you can ask me anything about anything. Read each other's questions and then thumbs up the questions you want me to respond to. The cutoff for today's video was 60 thumbs up. Thank you so much to everyone who left a question or read each other's questions. We got some good ones. So the top ranked question was from John Nunn, and this is what he asks. If Iran folds, what impact will this have on the Russia-Ukraine war? I've kind of been talking about this all week, my last 3 update videos, but these are the top 4 effects in my opinion. The first one is that Iran does produce missiles and drones, and they have been supplying missiles and drones to the Russian military. Not for free. Russia has to pay for them, but if Iran's military is crippled, or if Israel wants to destroy any of these missiles and drones, this is not good for the Russian military. The weaker that Iran's military becomes, the less able they are to help the Russians. The next is, of course, economic. Iran is in BRICS now, I think. The I in BRICS stands for India, not Iran. But in 2024, there was 6 new members admitted to the bloc. Argentina, Ethiopia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran. So Iran does economically coordinate with the Russians on whatever, but the more that Israel weakens Iran's government, the less they can contribute to this economic alliance. My update video from last week did include a Telegram post from Igor Girkin. He gave his analysis, if Iran is weakened, how this negatively impacts Russia. And he talked about the southern corridor for Russia. It's been this way for a while, but Russia imports and exports to the Indian Ocean and the east coast of Africa through Iran. So the Russians will load up ships in Astrakhan, sail through the Caspian Sea, it then has to be unloaded and then transported across land through Iran, reloaded on ships, and then sent to India or Africa or wherever. So if the government of Iran collapses or this country destabilizes, perhaps Iran becomes an unfriendly country, yes, this is going to negatively impact Russia's economy if they can't as easily or as cheaply use the southern corridor to get imports and exports each way. But I argue the biggest benefit is morale. When Bashar al-Assad's government collapsed in December, this had a negative impact on the Russian military. They had 2 military bases located in Syria. Putin sent the Russian military to try and help save Assad's government. Syria was their military ally. It's been this way for 15 years or so. And Russia couldn't save them. So if Iran's government destabilizes, if the Iranian military weakens, everyone in Russia knows what this means. Iran is their ally, and if they can't protect or save or help their own allies, then that's a negative indicator of their own military ability. I shared this headline in my last update video. Russians' grassroots fundraising for Ukraine war collapses. And basically an independent news outlet in Russia was examining pro-war Telegram channels in Russia. And there was genuine support the first 2 years or so. But people in Russia, as we're going on year 4, they don't actually believe that they're winning. Yes, they generally support Putin and they generally support what their government is doing, but this was supposed to be a 3-day limited special military operation. And we're now on year 4 of this war. And they're losing allies every single day. Next question. As a European, I would like to know how long the Trump administration can last after the midterm election if things continue to look bad for them. Will Trump be impeached and new elections held, or do we have to wait until 2028 for this insanity to end? So unlike parliamentary governments where governments can fall and then you have new elections, we can't do that in the United States. It's fixed. So there will not be another presidential election until 2028. But that doesn't mean that we can't get rid of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. There actually is a historical precedent from 50 years ago, and this was the removal of Nixon's Vice President Spiro Agnew. I guarantee you not many Americans know who Spiro Agnew is, but he resigned for tax evasion, corruption, but he was going to be impeached anyways. Nixon then, shortly after, also resigned. So for 2 years, 1975 and 1976, the two guys in charge of America were not elected. This was the Vice President Rockefeller and this was President Gerald Ford, but nobody voted for these guys. They did not win a presidential election. So it's possible, and we just did it here in America 50 years ago. So if the Democrats win huge in the midterms, they have overwhelming majorities in both the House and the Senate because it's a complete blowout. That's the dream scenario, and the Democrats can first remove J.D. Vance as vice president and then remove Donald Trump as president, and in theory, the Speaker of the House will then become president. This would be Hakeem Jeffries. Now, I think what Hakeem Jeffries would do is he would say, I'm just going to occupy the job for 2 years. I am not running again. I'm just a caretaker until America can sort this out in the 2028 presidential election. That would be the ideal scenario, but a lot's going to have to happen to get there. And the midterms, especially in the Senate, it can't even be close. Republicans have to lose absolutely everywhere where it's competitive. Republicans in the Senate would have to lose basically Iowa, Ohio, Maine, North Carolina, Montana, Alaska, maybe Texas and Florida. If Donald Trump is so unpopular that congressional Republicans are just getting wiped out, then they will turn on him because members of Congress and the Senate don't want to lose their seats in 2028. Trump has finally said he's not running again, but if he's president in 2028 while everyone else is running, then it's going to be another bloodbath. But if the Republicans in Congress turn on Trump in January of 2027, quickly get rid of him, they can try and recover their reputation and then have a new field of candidates to be competitive in 2028. Nobody knows what's going to happen because everything is insane. But if you want my honest opinion, I don't think Trump is going to make it to January of 2027 just based on his health. He is 79 years old, the oldest man ever elected president, and he's really unhealthy. He eats terribly, and I'm sure he doesn't listen to medical advice. And he just falls asleep in public everywhere now. This was him at the Pope's funeral. People who are advanced in age 79, they have health complications. But when you're the president of the United States, you're not supposed to have health complications. This is what sunk Joe Biden. Joe Biden was too old to be president. And over the next 2 years, we're going to have the same conversation. This was a mistake for America. Donald Trump is too old to be president. And I do think a heart attack, a stroke, or cancer is going to get him at some point in the next 2 years. And then Republicans don't have to impeach him if he just naturally expires. I saw this clip the other day and I'm going to share it with you guys. This is Donald Trump's standard order from McDonald's whenever he chooses to eat McDonald's. I'm going to play this clip.
You know what Donald Trump's order, his regular order from McDonald's is? This isn't even a joke. It's just horrifying. It's 2 quarter pounders with cheese, 2 filet-o-fish, and a chocolate shake.
No fries.
So that is 2 quarter pounders, 417 calories each, 2 filet-o-fish, 379 calories each, and a 650 calorie chocolate shake. This was kind of a funny moment, but when Trump visited Saudi Arabia, the Saudis made sure to have a mobile McDonald's in the parking lot for Trump to get food. But yeah, this guy's on borrowed time. This honestly would be the best scenario. I don't want to be wishing for anyone's death, but Trump is a nightmare, and Republicans are not willing to go against him. What other options are there here, guys? I don't want anyone to assassinate the president. That is a terrible idea. I think if Trump became a martyr, it would make things worse. But if he is careless and consumes 3,000 calories a night eating McDonald's and he dies of a heart attack, there's no conspiracy. We know who the culprit was. Next question. If I am correct in the current situation, Trump is not going to let Ukraine even buy weapons in the future. I'm not sure this is inked in as a policy, but how will, if it is true, Trump justify this to a country which is mostly behind Ukraine and against the Russian illegal invasion? If Trump does not allow even the purchase of weapons, which would be earning U.S. companies money, how will Trump justify this, and can Congress come to Ukraine's aid by somehow nullifying Trump's position? As long as Republicans control Congress, they're just going to do whatever Trump says, so Congress will not act without Trump saying it's okay. And Trump actually has been approving the sale of limited amounts of military aid. This was about $50 million. There was another $30 million last week. So there's some kind of critical components that only the United States can supply. And Trump is permitting the sale of a limited amount of special equipment that Ukraine needs. Why, I don't know, but he is doing it. But he's not willing to do large defense sales such as this. Zelensky says he wants to purchase 10 Patriot battery systems for $15 billion. That's $1.5 billion each, and Trump is saying no to this for some reason. But in general, your question, how can Trump justify this? Trump doesn't care what the American people think. Yes, when you poll Americans, 60 to 70% of Americans support Ukraine. But among MAGA, it's not a top 5 issue. Like, there are Trump supporters who also support Ukraine, but they care way more about, trans issues or wokeness or illegal immigration or whatever. So unfortunately for those people, Trump supporters who also support Ukraine, they're not willing to give up their support for Trump, even though Trump obviously at this point favors Russia and does not support Ukraine. Trump does the calculations in his head, and as long as he can get away with this, he's going to continue showing preference to the Russians because he knows he's not really losing any support. Nobody is giving up their support for him over his obvious support for Russia. Next question is from Darkest Alice. Hello, Jake. Thank you so much for all that you do. Can you explain if redirecting the 20,000 air defense cylinders that were authorized by the previous administration is legal? I know that the current administration is not caring a lot about the law, but Secretary Hegseth admitted that they deliberately diverted these air defense cylinders that were supposed to go to Ukraine to the Middle East. How are they able to do this if this is not legal? And right now, Donald Trump doesn't care about the law. It's the job of the U.S. Department of Justice to enforce the law, and the Department of Justice is supposed to be independent. It's supposed to be neutral. You want the people enforcing the law to not have a political leaning or a political bias, but that's not what Donald Trump and MAGA believe. So Pam Bondi is the U.S. Attorney General, and the Justice Department is now a partisan organization. Trump is trying to turn every federal agency into a pro-Trump, partisan MAGA organization that just prosecutes Democrats and liberals, people that are trying to oppose Trump. This is what dictators do, but You can just Google Trump and Justice Department, and all of these headlines are the Justice Department not enforcing the law, or the Justice Department breaking the law to try and help Trump in some way. This is America right now. We are losing the rule of law. Trump is a dictator wannabe, and this is what every dictator does. They make partisan, they politicize the military, the FBI, the CIA, the Justice Department, to just hunt and go after your domestic enemies, to consolidate power. So what is the only check on this abuse of power? And it's Congress, which they won't do. So if the president is breaking the law, which he is in every way, then Congress has to vote to impeach him, to remove him from office. And they're just not going to do this prior to the 2027 midterm elections. So I'll explain to you what the concern is. Why do Republicans in Congress go along with this lawlessness? And Senator Lindsey Graham is a perfect example. When you go to Senator Lindsey Graham's page, his pinned tweet is saying, "Thank you so much, Trump, for your endorsement." Senator Lindsey Graham is up for re-election in 2026. And Republican senators and Republican congressmen, they don't fear the general election. Of the 535 members of Congress, 400 of them basically live in safe districts. They're never going to lose to a Democrat. They're never going to lose to a Republican. They're only scared of the primary process. The primary is held usually 6 months before the general election, and that determines who represents the party in the general election. So Lindsey Graham is just trying to survive a primary. He doesn't want Donald Trump to endorse a primary candidate for the Republican nomination in South Carolina against Lindsey Graham. So that is why members of Congress will not hold Trump accountable, because if they try to, they're no longer members of Congress. That's what happened to Adam Kinzinger. That's what happened to Liz Cheney. Mitt Romney retired. Bob Corker. Anybody in Congress who tries to uphold the law and uphold the Constitution, Trump just gets rid of them through the primary process. This is a problem. I don't have a solution here. Next question is from Chris James. How can the U.S. viewers most effectively lobby our representatives and senators to support Ukraine? Is there an organization we can support, petition to sign, letter to write? Can you coordinate us to make a collective impact? If you're an American citizen, please sign up and go to these, they're now monthly protests against Trump. The broad umbrella organization is 5051, but there are lots of other smaller organizations that are also part of this. The next national protest will be on July 4th, as well as July 17th. If you can go to this website, you can find how to sign up and show up. Show up for like an hour. Bring a sign, dress up, bring your friends and family. This is important to demonstrate because politicians do pay attention to this. They worry about activists who are organizing people, because if you're willing to show up at a protest, you're willing to vote, you're willing to donate, you're willing to volunteer, you're willing to do everything necessary to defeat the Republicans in the 2026 midterms. If you want to call, contact, write your representatives, that's a good thing. I encourage that. They hate receiving lots of letters and emails from their constituents, but right now, Republicans in Congress are more afraid of Donald Trump and being primaried than they are of their actual voters in a general election. That's the answer here. Next question is from Paul. Could you interview President Zelensky sometime? Seriously, I think you could. It's funny you should ask me this because friend of the channel, Kaylin Robertson, this week is interviewing President Zelensky. Kaylin's had some pretty amazing reports that he's put out on social media, and he got the attention of President Zelensky. So this is Kalin sitting right here across the table from President Zelensky. So I do think that if I was an American based in Ukraine, I would have gotten his attention by now and probably done an interview in person. Remote interviews aren't as personable or effective, but I could get there. Let me tell you guys, I'm currently talking with Alexander Vindman, and he might be the next podcast guest on this channel. Alexander Vindman is pretty well known. I've had several members of Congress appear on my channel now, and I'm going to start chasing bigger and bigger names to appear. And once you have the reputation of being a credible person offering fair interviews, then I think eventually if I keep doing this and the war keeps going on, eventually I think President Zelensky will notice and acknowledge me, but I'm not seeking that out. That doesn't matter to me, guys. That's not what motivates me day to day. Next question. I am truly inquisitive regarding the Russian troops and personnel in Moldova. How do they even exist? Support from Mother Russia can surely only be emotional rather than actual. How do they provide for themselves? Food, rubles, socially, etc. This also was a mystery to me, and then somebody in the comments section explained it to me. But the Russian troops in Moldova are not Russian. They're from Moldova. What the Russian military does is they just recruit locals in Transnistria, put them in a Russian uniform, maybe even give them a Russian passports, and then they say they're Russian soldiers. But the 2,000 or 3,000 soldiers in this breakaway border region are locals, just in Russian uniforms. So anytime they want to rotate or... I don't think the Russian military can resupply Transnistria. Transnistria is not getting any more ammunition. They're not getting any more tanks. They're not getting any more artillery. They just exist as this breakaway region, which, to end Transnistria, you just have to end the money. I understand that gas supplies from Russia is how Moscow controlled these regions, but the gas supply has been cut off. The only thing keeping Transnistria going is money, funding. So if there's some kind of economic collapse in Russia, these soldiers in the Transnistria will stop getting paid, and then they'll stop showing up for work. I do think this is inevitable, that this region will collapse and normalize, reintegrate with Moldova, and then Moldova can have a pathway to the European Union, as well as NATO, and we all can move on. Dear Jake, why do you think the US Congress is doing nothing to counteract President Trump? Are they really so greedy on power, or what could they possibly fear from Trump that is worse than defending democracy and freedom? And this goes for both parties. Thanks for your work. If you want the honest truth, I think people like J.D. Vance and people like Marco Rubio, they do believe they will be president in 2028. So they're just waiting for Trump to die. They want the devotion and support of all of Trump's supporters once Trump is gone. So there's no crime that they're not willing to tolerate, because they think they'll have the power for themselves someday. Rubio definitely believes he's going to be president someday. J.D. Vance thinks the exact same thing. I'm sure there are other senators or governors who just want that title. They just want that power for themselves. But they can't destroy their political career by correctly calling out Trump for being a fascist. Because any power that Trump accumulates now will then be theirs once they're president. It's pretty disgusting and cynical, but that's the answer to your question. Along with the primary process, and people living in the Emerald City just want to remain there. This is a pretty long question, so I'll skip this part. And this person asks, can you elaborate on how far your government is on the path to outright autocracy? How big a chance is there that the midterms will simply be canceled? And if not canceled, how much jurisdiction there will be left for Congress to prevent a full-blown autocracy? Trump would love to turn Congress into basically the Duma, where they don't really matter. They're just a rubber stamp process for the autocrats. And Trump is publicly saying he has the ability to create law with executive orders, and only Trump can interpret law through executive orders. So Trump is saying that the judicial branch serves no purpose, and the legislative branch also serves no purpose. He has all the power for himself. That's not democracy. We're supposed to have three separate co-equal branches of government sharing power. The president only has the power to execute law, but Congress has to make it, and the courts can say what it is exactly, or if something is unconstitutional. So America's institutions are fighting back. In the 1990s, Russia had a constitution, Russia had courts, but the Russian people had no tradition of democracy. But here in the United States, we do. So our institutions at the moment, 6 months into Trump's presidency, are still holding. The most important one at the moment, I do believe, is the United States military. People in uniform cannot publicly speak out. They can't go on podcasts. They can't post on social media. But behind closed doors, I guarantee you there are generals and admirals telling Trump, no, that is illegal. I am not going to do that. You are going to have to fire me. And they're being fired. Trump has fired, I don't know how many generals, but he's been firing generals and he's been firing colonels who have been refusing illegal orders. But I don't think it's going to get better. I don't think you can shop around for a 4-star general to do what you want when these are people who have been serving their country for 30 or 40 years across Republican presidents and Democratic presidents. Like, they're not going to turn into fascists overnight. And there's thousands of them. Everyone graduating from West Point or the Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy, they're taught and trained from age 18 to defend democracy and uphold the Constitution. In dictatorships, usually the son is appointed a 4-star general. And I'm sure Trump would love to appoint Eric or Barron as the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs, but he hasn't done that yet. The courts are also ruling against Trump every day. The 3 justices that Trump appointed, let's see, Kavanaugh, Amy Barron Coleman, and Gorsuch, they've all ruled against Trump at some point in the last 6 months. Trump keeps losing Supreme Court cases because if you're a Supreme Court justice, why would you vote to make yourself irrelevant? Trump is trying to say he has the ability to interpret law. If the president has that power, why do we have a Supreme Court? The president is the ultimate authority on what the law is, according to Trump. So the courts are not going along with this. Now, the courts don't have any power. The courts don't have an army to enforce their judicial rulings. It's supposed to be the executive branch that enforces court rulings. But this is important. They're doing the correct thing. There's also the states. The states are still acting independently of the federal government. They're supposed to. And the governors are not going along with this. The governors of Democratic states are resisting. And really, it's about just dragging out the process. You want to kill time. Everyone in America has 3.5 years to kill until the next presidential election. So the more that we can bog down and distract Trump and his cronies, the more we're just killing time, running out the clock. So Gavin Newsom's doing a good job of distracting and bogging down Trump. This is not great for the people of California, but we need more governors like him to step up and to fight back and to resist everything that Donald Trump is trying to do. This is about our freedom, guys. Trump deployed 3,000 National Guardsmen to Los Angeles for a couple thousand people rioting for a single night on 2 city blocks in downtown LA. This is not an insurrection. This is not an invasion. Trump is trying to normalize uniformed military personnel with automatic weapons on our streets to enforce whatever he plans to do or wants to do. This is not okay. This is not normal. This is fascism to be using military personnel against citizens. When the LAPD has not asked for help, the local police have it under control. LA is fine, but Trump is trying to normalize the use of military against civilians to build this fascist state. He's not doing a good job, but he's trying. Many in Europe are talking about an invasion of Latvia and Estonia to create a land bridge from St. Petersburg to Kaliningrad at some point. I think it can be done this year with little green men on motorcycles mixing into the locals before Europe reinforces the border. What are your thoughts on this way of distracting Europe from Ukraine? This would not be a distraction of Europe from Ukraine. This would finally wake Europe up. Russia has declared war on Europe. What Russia wants is all American forces and all American influence off the European continent so that the Russians can militarily, politically, and economically take over the entire continent. What the Russians want is basically what they had for 40 years, between 1949 and 1989. Every political decision made in these territories controlled by the Russians had to go through the Kremlin. The Kremlin had to get their slice of the pie. They had to get their kickbacks. This is what Putin wants, but why stop at only half of Europe? Why not politically control all of Germany, politically control France, politically control the United Kingdom? Just get a shitty right-wing dictator in charge of all these countries, destroy their democracies, and then it's all yours. Corruption, graft, empire. So your question of would this distract from Ukraine if Russia invaded the Baltics? No, this would wake Europe up, and Europe would have to send their militaries. I've been saying for the last 3 years that Europe should send their militaries to Ukraine. Even if they're not frontline forces, why are there not French trainers, German security experts, Italian medics in Ukraine helping Ukraine to defeat the Russians today? Who am I to say? Because the United States isn't helping either, but how do you foresee Donald Trump and Putin's relationship will change if the United States strikes Iran? And the friendship or relationship between Trump and Putin is perfect right now because Trump is doing everything that Putin wants concerning Ukraine. Putin called Trump on his birthday to wish him a happy birthday, but I think the Russians have accepted that Iran is a lost cause. Iran is Muslim, and Iran's economy is not that great. We talked about the benefits, but I think Putin has done the calculations and he would rather maintain his friendship with the other Gulf states, Russia's neutral position with Israel, and Russia's favorable position with the United States. If they're just willing to give up Iran, they can keep all the other benefits. And this is the conspiracy that I tossed out last week if you saw my recent video. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went to Florida. This article is from July of last year. So when Trump was the Republican nominee, he wasn't president yet. The Prime Minister of Israel went to Mar-a-Lago to meet with him, and that's Steve Witkoff sitting right there at the table with them. Why would you make Steve Witkoff the negotiator with Iran and then also the negotiator with Russia? Why would this not be two different people unless the issues were connected? So I have no proof here, guys. This is just my gut instinct. But I think what Netanyahu and Witkoff and Trump promised the Russians is When we move on Iran, don't interfere. Don't nuke Israel. Don't defend Iran. And in exchange, we'll look the other way when you continue your war in Ukraine. I don't think the Russians agreed to this. I don't think there was a quid pro quo, but just looking at this meeting, looking at these guys, their public comments, it is my suspicion. Putin's taking the deal because what else can he do? The Russians are incredibly weak right now. Jake, please do another fundraiser. I'm ready to donate some money. How this works with the guys of the NAFO 69 Sniffing Brigade is they complete the work for the last fundraiser. So another 40 trucks are being fixed up and delivered, or 30 trucks from the last fundraiser. Once all the trucks are ready and delivered, they then notify me and we launch the next fundraiser. This just happens to be about every 3 months, and I haven't gotten a message from them in like 2 weeks, but I think they're close to being done delivering all of the aid from the last fundraiser. So the next one might be coming up in the next week or two. I'm not sure, but I do think it is coming up soon. So hold on to your donations or donate to a different worthy cause, but the next fundraiser will be coming soon. Do you think America can make it to the midterms, and do you think they'll be free and fair? The states are in charge of running their own elections. So there is no federal system for Donald Trump to take over. The state of Wisconsin, the state of Texas, the state of California, they make up the rules, how they vote. This causes a lot of chaos and confusion, and it's frustrating, but it does protect us from what Vladimir Putin did in Russia, or what Kim Jong-un has in North Korea. They have elections in North Korea, by the way. So I think the elections will still be free, but they won't be fair. Trump is weaponizing the FBI, weaponizing the Justice Department, weaponizing the National Guard, so that we don't have free and fair elections in 2026, but we're still going to have elections. So it's important that people protest and demonstrate, because this is having an impact. The MAGA movement is collapsing in on itself. If you watch my videos from 3 or 4 months ago, I was pretty freaked out. But now that I see that the military and the courts are holding, and people are taking to the streets, they're actually showing up for these protests. In addition, all of these people in MAGA hate each other. Yes, they were able to unite to defeat Kamala Harris and bring down Joe Biden. But this is going to keep happening because all of these people are assholes. Trump and Elon fighting with each other. This is going to continue. At some point, Elon Musk is going to get upset about something, and he's going to keep taking shots at Trump, and Trump always fires back. Pro-Trump media figures split over the U.S. role in the Israel-Iran conflict. This week, MAGA is having a civil war over this issue. Should Donald Trump authorize military use against Iran in support of Israel? And MAGA is kind of evenly divided with two different sides that want things for different reasons. The first faction, these are the evangelicals. They want to support Israel because they think Christians should have access to the Holy Land. There's then national security Republicans like Lindsey Graham. They believe in democracy and human rights and want to see authoritarian regimes weakened. That's the pro-Israel side of MAGA. You then have the, not anti-Israel, but basically the isolationist wing of MAGA. People like Steve Bannon. They just don't think the United States military should ever be involved in foreign wars ever again. But then you've got the pro-BRICS, pro-authoritarian wing of MAGA. This is like Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson. They're just basically pro-Russia, pro-China, pro-BRICS at this point, but they also support Donald Trump in order to weaken America. All of these people are fighting with each other. This is pretty entertaining to watch, but this clip went viral this week of Ted Cruz fighting with Tucker Carlson on Tucker Carlson's podcast. And All these people are MAGA. They're all Republicans, and they are all fighting with each other this week over Israel. Alex Jones delivers blistering rebuke of Trump and MAGA civil war. And because Trump is supporting Israel right now, Trump has lost the support of Alex Jones. Why would you want the support of Alex Jones? But that's what Trump has been on his program before. Joe Rogan breaks with Trump on crazy aspect of his mass deportation plan. I'm calling it now that at some point in the next year, Joe Rogan is going to disavow Trump and then tell his audience it was a huge mistake for Rogan to endorse and support him. This is going to further drive a wedge, but here we go. Joe Rogan regular Dave Smith makes U-turn on Trump and calls for the president's impeachment. This is comedian Dave Smith, and I debated this guy on Piers Morgan 3 months ago. This was a pro-Trump, pro-Russian commentator I debated on Piers Morgan, and because of Israel and Trump supporting Israel, he now wants Trump impeached and removed from office. The MAGA movement is collapsing, guys. All of the signs are there. So I hope that we can have free and fair elections in the midterms, because none of these people are going to be able to coordinate with each other to maintain Republican majorities in Congress. I show you guys this approval rating charts. This is very important. Whether or not military leaders will carry out illegal actions, whether judges will bow down to Trump, whether state and local politicians, whether police commissioners, whether or not our democracy fails in the beginning does matter on Trump's popularity and approval. Currently, it's at 44%, but I think because of Israel and Iran, this is probably going to drop another 4% this week. So once we start getting the polling data for next week, Trump's going to be weakened yet again. I don't really have a tie-in to Russia and Ukraine. This is more about me being American trying to save my democracy. But that's where we are, guys. Thank you so much for your support, supporting me, supporting this channel. I'm trying to make a difference. I've revolved my entire life right now around YouTube and all of my social media accounts, trying to defend the truth, defend democracy. That's been the slogan of my channel for the last 3.5 years, and it's more relevant than ever. But I'm not hopeless, guys. I wouldn't be doing this if I was completely nihilistic about the future of humanity. I do think good people, if you're watching this video, you're one of them. I do believe good people are putting in the time. They're doing everything they can to help defeat Russia, to save Ukraine, to stop Donald Trump, and to fix the problems in the world. Things feel like they're getting worse because you don't hear about the good news. You don't hear about the behind the scenes victories in medicine and science and local governments. There's a lot of progress and positive things happening in the world, but they're just being overshadowed by war and suffering. But I'm never giving up, and I don't think you are either. So thank you so much for your support once again. Thank you for watching this Q&A. I'll be back tomorrow with another regular update video. Take care, everyone.